is Jewish or Muslim or agnostic or atheist expect fair treatment from a crusading Christian governor?
Absolutely. I'm not crusading in my role of government.
You say that Scripture prescribes certain things that good people should do. Different people read Scripture differently.
An issue.
Do you think that there are sufficient guarantees of protection for gay rights in this state now?
No, I don't believe so.
There's a celebrated remark you made that homosexuality shortens life expectancy by 35 years. What's the source of that? For us, what your belief about homosexuality is. Do you view it as an illness or as a moral shortcoming? That 60 years of federally mandated welfare have undermined people's incentive to work, and that in principle require all who receive welfare to work? Some welfare-related programs that you voted against in the legislature, and I'm curious what kind of programs for the poor you think are appropriate. I think you voted against school breakfasts and against prenatal care for poor unwed mothers. Agree that we should not indulge the poor or those who need welfare with free breakfasts or prenatal care? In some national attention when you sponsored a measure to castrate sex offenders in return for a reduction in their sentence.
Are lower, and this is surgical castration, that the recidivism rate drops down to probably about 1%.
So you haven't given up your support of the concept of castration of sex criminals at all?
No, I don't.
Mr. Locke, how would you come down on that?
We're going to have many millions of additional people in this region. We're going to have many millions of additional people in this region. We're going to have many millions of additional people in this region.
Yes.
When?
Who is John Huang?
I don't know exactly date. There are quite a few times.
Why was he missing for days?
It's only a few days on this. I'm here.
And what was he doing for the Democrats?
You've been hearing his name a lot these last couple of days, John Huang. Nightline correspondent Chris Bury picks up the story.
The elusive John Huang, the Democratic Party's mysterious money man, finally surfaced from a taxi cab in Washington today. Last week, even U.S. Marshals couldn't find him. Huang emerged only after a federal judge had ordered him to answer questions about his work at the Commerce Department before he became a top Democratic fundraiser.
And I'd like to thank my longtime friend John Huang for being so effective.
John Huang had been missing in action since questions began swirling about his role raising millions of dollars from foreigners and Asian Americans. Questions raised on the record in a videotaped deposition today.
Mr. Huang, where were you born?
How did John Huang, born in China, educated on Taiwan, MBA from Connecticut, come to stand at the intersection of money, power, and White House politics?
All roads lead to Arkansas.
Today, Huang said Hillary Clinton had sent him an indirect message of support during his 2 weeks of hiding through friends in the Asian American community.
And I believe the indirectly message coming back is Mrs. Clinton is also saying, John is a friend of mine as well.
Huang said Hillary Clinton had sent him an indirect message of support during his 2 weeks of hiding through friends in the Asian American community.
And I believe the indirectly message coming back is Mrs. Clinton is also saying, John is a friend of mine as well.
Because we're going to have many millions of additional people in this region. We're going to have many millions of additional people in this region. Have many millions of additional people in this region.
It may be the only fundraiser Gary Locke ever holds that comes complete with stern-faced Secret Service agents and bomb-sniffing dogs. But it isn't every fundraiser that can boast First Lady Hillary Clinton as the star attraction. That's her slipping in the side door. But it has also caused Locke some controversy. A Los Angeles fundraiser last weekend was partly sponsored by John Huang, a prominent Democratic Party fundraiser. Huang was removed from his post last week after helping the party bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars in questionable contributions from foreign nationals.
Thank you very much.
Hey, so how's everyone?
Well, hi, Gary. How are you?
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good. So, sir, I wanted to call your attention to some correspondence here.
What are you
addressed
with?
to your
Who
office.
are you with?
Channel 29.
Channel 29.
And this is the document from this year, rather October of last year, where you say that you fully concur with the findings of Sharon Stewart Johnson, that there were no problems with the Kurt Cobain autopsy.
Hang on for a second. Hi, Gary Locke.
I think you're going to have to take it up with his office.
I've been doing that for 2 years, darling.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
That's okay.
See, the problem is that Sharon Stewart Johnson...
Good to see you. Hi, Pat. How you doing?
Very good.
Very much.
See you later.
Okay. So, sir, I wonder if you're aware of the fact that Sharon Stewart Johnson is not a pathologist. She's not qualified to offer an opinion as to the accuracy of that autopsy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand, but it's all under her department, and Dr.
It's all under your department. You are the King County executive.
I stand by my people.
It is your responsibility to order an inquest in a case of violent death. Do you understand? A case of unresolved violent death.
Hi,
Sharon Stewart Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you.
Good luck.
All right, take care. Bye-bye now. All right, thank you.
Mr. Locke, Ms. Stewart Johnson's own document is contradictory. It says that there was massive destruction of the head, and yet little or no blood was present at the scene of the crime. How is that possible? You've had 2 years to address this issue, sir. It involves the violent homicide of the leading citizen of the city of Seattle.
And good evening once again to the program. That is the program, the title and theme of which you well know, given that, of course, you've been looking at the titles for the last 8 or 9 minutes here. And, well, for those of you who don't tune in on an extremely regular basis, you may or may not realize that we actually ran the same series of images, the same video roll there from last week that we had aired last week, and that is all for the purposes of actually kind of taking a bit of a victory lap, I would say, in terms of having come up with, I think, you know, one of the best exclusive stories in this presidential campaign year. And that is, for those of you who couldn't piece it together yourselves from looking at our video clip selection there, and those of you who haven't heard me explain it before, basically, what we've reported in the last several weeks is a rather direct connection between the hottest and most disturbing scandal on the Clintons' rather piled high plate of scandal at this particular time. That is the John Huang scandal. That is the lingering question as to why Mr. Huang and others connected with the Commerce Department and the Democratic National Committee have, to all appearances, been flying around the world for the last several years soliciting contributions from foreign businessmen and government officials for the Democratic National Committee, even though this is clearly illegal. And those of you who've seen Mr. Clinton's responses to this scandal in recent days, of course, you know, if you actually take Clinton at his word with, for instance, David Brinkley yesterday, you know, he added that he feels that the McClain-Feingold bill is something he definitely supports, except there needs to be one more item added to the bill, and that is we really want to make sure that it's illegal for foreign nationals to be making contributions to our elections, because Mr. Clinton feels that that is something that should be illegal, when in fact it is already illegal. He's presumably talking about some further emphasis in the law that would make it further illegal, but the fact is that there's no doubt but that that is illegal, and that particularly in the way that the Clinton White House has conducted itself on these issues, it's extremely illegal. And, you know, the idea of John Huang showing up 65 times or more to the White House when he is supposed to be at arm's length from the business of the White House as a political operative for the DNC leads one to believe that you're sort of getting into the area of bagman activity. Bagman, of course, being the terminology for one who handles cash in an illegal way, most frequently associated with political activity and campaign contributions which may occasionally come in cash and you know, be delivered in the trunk of Mr. Huang's car to the White House. Otherwise, why was he going to the White House, you know, perhaps 65 or more times? And of course, what we're getting at here is that here in Washington State, we now have a new governor-elect, Gary Locke, who has participated in all of this in a rather direct way. He wasn't flying around the world with John Huang for the last several years, but Huang organized a Los Angeles fundraiser for Mr. Locke, which was sparsely attended because the story broke and Huang was then on the run from U.S. Marshals. And then there was a greater level of activity about a week later when Hillary Clinton was the announced guest, and she did make an appearance at the Locke-Huang event 2 blocks from the White House in Washington, D.C. And the most important thing about us bringing this up on a repeated basis, that is covering much of the same material that we've covered last week, is that, you know, this is one article that was in the PI, Locke fundraiser sideswiped by Huang scandal. This is the only article that ever appeared in the Seattle Press, as nearly as I was able to find through a computer search. So one article on this new governor of ours being mixed up in this scandal, and one report on Channel 7, which we showed you this evening, which we've showed you before. And those of you who've been paying attention and watching the show in recent weeks know that I've sort of tied all of this up together in a, you know, neat little package having to do with the possibility of Seattle becoming inundated with immigrants. You saw Mr. Locke there talking about millions of people moving into the region. That is something that he has never defined in any way what his intentions are. And you saw, you know, political cross-examiner Jim Compton there giving Mrs. Craswell the what for on all of her religious beliefs, which have been gone over and over again in this election season. And yet Locke says something about millions of people moving into the region, and there's really not, you know, even word one asked about just, you know, frankly, what the hell he's talking about, where these millions of people are supposed to be coming from. But the parallel that I drew is that if you go 100 miles to the north to Vancouver, you do have 250,000 people who've moved in the last 10 years or so, since it was announced that mainland China would be taking over Hong Kong, and all of these people, 250,000 of them, do come from Hong Kong. And that has never occurred in the U.S., although it has occurred to a smaller extent with Russian immigrants, a lot of whom are living on the east side. And, you know, Russian immigrants have presented certain problems in terms of law enforcement and their connections to organized crime. And the fact is, though, that only a small percentage of Russians and Russian immigrants are believed to have any connections to organized crime. On the other hand, from what I've read in the Hong Kong population, fully 5% of the general population, male, female, or whatever, are believed to be hardcore sworn members to the Chinese triads. In other words, the FBI has been chasing around Russian speakers since, you know, the Rosenbergs and even before there was an FBI in the early days of this century. The FBI has been extremely gung-ho about pursuing Russian speakers. So they might have a bit of a leg up if, in fact, there is a Russian mafia problem, which the FBI says there is. They may have something of an ability to keep up with the Russian mafia, although why they would let such persons into the country in the first place is obviously a mystery to all of us. On the other hand, if we're not careful about Hong Kong immigration, what we're going to end up with is the Chinese triads, the most feared, largest, and most prosperous, die-hard criminal organization in the world, infiltrating the United States on a massive scale. And in an effort to counteract that, we'll be stuck with an FBI that has rarely even hired Asian American personnel, presumably because of the perpetual bigotry in hiring practices at FBI. And so, if you research it, you'll find the top FBI personnel, including, I think, Director Free, admitting that when it comes to tracking Asian crime gangs, the FBI and the US of A are simply SOL. Just do not have a prayer of keeping up with Asian crime gangs in any way, which is one reason why immigration from the island of Hong Kong is something that we ought to look at very skeptically, and also wonder if, in fact, this is not precisely what Gary Locke is up to. That is, he's talking about it in some respects. His statements on this have not been defined because no one has asked him to define these things. And yet, if you look at it in the context of the Cobain homicide case and other cases, for instance, we revealed to you, I'm sure as no other journalistic entity has, that Mr. Locke took money from Mary Pang, right? Why is he doing that? Her son is possibly guilty, possibly innocent, but there's no doubt but that he's being prosecuted by the King County government on a quadruple murder charge, or whether it's going to be murder or some other charge might be clear as early as tomorrow. But up until this point, it's been called quadruple murder by everyone up to and including, in a rather improper way, Janet Reno herself. And in case you think that I'm getting carried away reading spy novels or whatever, here's one article I found that does pretty succinctly define what we're talking about. It's from Maclean's, a leading Canadian magazine. It's actually several years old. It's an article from 1991. The richest, most far-reaching, and most ruthless criminal organization in the world, the Chinese Triads. These gangs are called 14K, Kung Lok, and many other names of the Triads. Maclean's states that it's believed that 300,000 of the 6 million residents of Hong Kong, only Hong Kong, are hardcore, as they say, full-fledged Triad members. They have a discipline unmatched by their North American criminal rivals. There has been a steady exodus of top Triad leaders to China towns in Canada, the United States, Australia, and Europe. They are into murder, certainly trafficking heroin, immigrant smuggling, extortion, and just about everything else. And I did feel it necessary to just point out that I'm not coming on the air here just rattling on in some, xenophobic or worse way about the need for some sort of cultural stability in this region and the absolute fear that all of us might have in terms of encountering new immigrants from Hong Kong come 1997, which rolls around in just a couple of months. And just to draw this back to the Cobain homicide case, the Cobain murder case, not only did Gary Locke accept money from apparently many foreign nationals in this election campaign, which is illegal, not only did he accept money from Mary Pang, which is highly improper if you ask me, we also caught him last week, the 30th of October, only a few days before the election, taking a payoff, a contribution from Chris Novoselic, the president of Nirvana Incorporated and the president of Jam Pack which is a music industry, a record industry, a political organization that Novoselic formed. And given that both of these guys are up to their arses in the Cobain homicide in extremely suspect ways, the idea of them meeting in a smoke-filled room to hand off a little stack of money, or presumably it was properly done in check form, leads us to believe that Mr. Locke is really capable of anything at all, including, as we've said, in no uncertain terms, direct participation in acts of homicide. That is Mr. Locke a participant in the cover-up of the murder of Kurt Cobain? And I would say, based on these documents, which we tried to hand to him, but which he and the wife more or less refused to walk away with, as you saw in the video there, the fact is that, Mr. Locke is apparently capable of anything. And so if you think I'm way off base in alleging or indicating that I believe that he would do business with Far East business interests, including organized crime, well, think twice. Apparently he's doing business with people who've committed crimes very locally, very publicly, and just why we should be asked to tolerate that or entertain it is quite beyond me. But hey, the guy doesn't even start as governor for 2 months, and already we've got all of this to deal with, right? But in any case, it's supposed to be a call-in show, and we're going to jump right into that, just so that we can keep our word that we're trying to run the show on that basis. And good evening. You're on the air, and what may we address for you?
Oh, yes, I was just wondering, I mean, your show is supposed to be about the Cobain issue, and you're talking about a lot of different political aspects, things that are going on, and which are, your views are pretty much right on, but I was kind of had a question on the Cobain thing.
Okay. All right, and what specifically did you want me to address?
Yeah, like Chris Novoselic, how is he involved with the cover-up, if it may be called a cover-up, and so-called homicide?
Well, as I stated on the show, we try not to repeat ourselves directly too many times, but I understand that you can have some level of confusion because it is complicated, so certainly that is a good question. We don't mind repeating ourselves on that issue. The fact is that Chris Novoselic was on television in terms of giving an interview to Como TV, Channel 4, on April 8th, 1994, the day that the body was discovered. And on that day, Novoselic, who's been with Cobain ever since the band started, and would be the most inside of inside sources, told Channel 4 that he had asked 1 million questions, and you could ask 1 million more, meaning that he had asked all the relevant questions, and that also it was a shame, isn't it a shame, we're just all sitting around brooding about this. In other words, Novoselic was basically making a public statement on the day that the body was discovered that he had absolutely no problems with the scenario, that he fully believed that it was a suicide thing and could not possibly be anything else.
Oh, that sounds suspect to me.
Right, exactly. Why wouldn't he be asking questions at that point? And then, of course, 2 days later, he had a little recorded announcement along with Courtney Love, so that they appeared to be quite clearly in league with each other, or in accordance with each other, let's say. And to bring Gary Locke into this, we handed off this document, this set of documents on him, to him 8 days ago, last Sunday, and basically what we were faced with was the typical obfuscation that we've received from Mr. Locke all the way down the line in this, which is that Locke was, Locke is on board with this thing and saying that he fully concurs with a review of the Cobain autopsy that was conducted by someone in the Department of Public Health who had absolutely no expertise in reviewing an autopsy report, and who also authored a document that says on page 1 that Cobain's head there was massive destruction to the head on her page 1. On her page 2, it says that there was no relatively little blood around Mr. Cobain's body when it was discovered because the head did not burst. In other words, she makes directly contradictory statements about whether or not there were obvious signs of shotgun injury to Mr. Cobain's head, which merely underlines what we've been saying all along, which is that he did not die of a shotgun wound. And we've been deceived on this point all the way down the line. And then just to add, the final point in answering your question, which is just ironic beyond belief, you know, on 2nd Avenue last week at the Speakeasy Cafe, there's a fundraiser. That room is used for many functions, as many of the political functions around town take place in various rooms. But it's a dark, smoke-filled room, basically, and it was some sort of music industry thing for Gary Locke. And Novoselic was there handing off a contribution to him. Presumably it was like $1,100 is the typical contribution from a big organization. Well, you know, what is the first guy that ratified the Cobain murder as suicide meeting with the last guy in the process of ratifying the murder as a suicide in a smoke-filled room 6 days before the election to hand off probably $1,100? It makes no sense to anyone who wants ethics in government. And we're fresh out of time, but thanks for calling.
Thanks.
And we'll see you again sometime soon.
All right.
And that's all. Thanks, and have a good evening.